Hello there! You're on Sinclair channel, the channel which is dedicated to the ZX Spectrum and stuff, and today we've got very special guests, representatives of the Spectrum Next team. Please welcome David Saphier and Tim Gilberts. Let's get it started. Tell us about yourself. How and when did you join the Spectrum Next team, and what exactly do you do for the project? Who is the first to answer? David,
if you like.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm Tim Gilberts. I'm the, what can I say? I got involved with the Spectrum Next mainly because I'd sort of come back into retro computing when my wife bought me one of those Bluetooth ZX keyboard things quite a long time ago. I'd been a little bit interested before, digging all my old things out of the attic. Having in the 80s, we ran a software house that sold computer games. So I was, just kids got grown up and had time to play. So I just came across the project on as being discussed on some of the forums, and it was seemed really fascinating. I thought this sounds exactly what I need to do, and it was just amazing to catch up with what had happened in the Spectrum, especially finding out all the stuff that had been done, in Eastern Europe, keeping the Spectrum alive for so long, and so many things had happened. It was just exciting to find out all the things I'd missed, and I just really got involved in everything I could see about the project. And I can't remember how, but one day Gary was doing something with ESX-DOS drivers for doing sound, and there was a mistake with or a problem in how small it had to be, 256 bytes. And I said, I wouldn't mind having a go at that. I'm quite good at making very small Z80. So I had a little play with it, and I managed to fit in the ability to do time and date, not just date, into the driver, and then into 256 bytes. And then Gary made space 512 bytes for an XZXOS. So so we managed to fit a few more things in. But from there, we just gone chatting to the team and sort of hang around. And through the time, we've just been involved helping out any way we can, going to shows, doing promotions like this, I suppose. Supplying some software, helping to get the testing done, in 6 a.m. in the morning just before the last release was due, having to remaster it because we found a mistake. It's everyone just pulls together and does whatever's necessary. Plus I do quite a lot of the electronics testing when we've got a final test board, so just make sure it's got the sort of signals we're expecting and things like that, but not half as much as the rest of them do, to be honest.
So when did I get into the Spectrum Next team kind of helping out? I think I was running a Facebook group called Basic on the ZX Spectrum, and one of the team members, Phoebus, got in touch, and he wanted some examples for Basic that was being done, and I got kind of brought into the team to look at, help out, do it right examples. But as time kind of went on, just other tasks popped up to do, such as I work with D for the controls for communicating with the Pi Zero that's in some of the accelerated models, for transferring TZX files up to the Pi so you can play them back. And yeah, I've just help out wherever I can. If there's a dot command that needs writing, there's testing that needs to be done, or we need to test certain features on the core. We just all kind of jump in, see what we can do, and try and make producing the software and the kind of core is smooth as possible, really.
Probably the main question that worries my viewers is, when will we see the Spectrum Next issue 2, and what are the reasons for such delays? Okay,
well, you're definitely going to see it, because the team is sweating to make sure it's going to happen, and there's no shortage of effort going into making sure. And plus you've got a very careful hand at the tiller with Mike Cadwallader. He's making sure that project management is just happening. So the current estimate is July next year, I believe, because that's when we're going to get the chips. But everyone's hoping it'll be a lot sooner, because you're really just in the queue for the manufacturer. But now it really is good. I actually had the test board with the Arctic 7 last night, and took about 10 minutes to find a particular, just an issue with it. It's got some minor little bits, but it just works. So the new design board works. It's running. I was playing with it last night. And Gary's had his and his again set up, so they're starting to get out to testers now, and they'll get a really, really thorough test now over the next couple of months, and then we'll be able to press the button and manufacture the moment the chips are available. So, it's just a waiting game now for the RTX 7, I think, but we will use the time. Alan has really put some effort in on getting this. Is to make it a really good experience for people. So that if stuff doesn't work or testing, just simple things like there's so many games out there now. We've got to try almost every game that exists because we don't want to break anything. Only last week there was a minor fix put in by Gary because he'd broken my original professional adventure writer from years ago. So thanks, Gary, for fixing that. So it still works on the next. But it's testing that history, and David's just got such a massive amount of software knowledge in the Spectrum community. It's just all it is. It's about that. So I think that's my view. Dave, what do you think? You reckon you're gonna?
I think we're looking on track for having it delivered next year. As Tim says, everyone who's worked helping the Nets move along, we're so keen and careful to make sure that there's nothing that's been overlooked. We want compatibility as high as possible. For example, loading games, any games that ever had problems loading via the TZX loader or the Gary's tap loader, people would jump on it. Gary would issue fixes for it. So if anybody ever reports a problem or an issue, everybody kind of focuses in, tries to get it resolved, and just as we said, hopefully, by next year, they'll be delivered and people will be very, very happy with the product.
And the same question about the Spectrum Next Issue 1. Why did it come out much later than it was expected? About 3 years of delay, if I'm not mistaken.
Oof. We're taking in turns to come up with things that went wrong.
Oh gosh, yeah. I'm trying to cast my mind back now. I think there were some issues with getting the mold right. The shape of the case was an important one.
Looked like a banana.
Yeah. Yeah, so when some of the initial kind of models were tested, I think the designers at Rick Dickinson Associate, they weren't happy with how it had turned out. And again, this is the focus on getting something perfect and not just going, that will do, or we'll just send it out. It's making it the best we can. So I think there were a number of elements along the way that people weren't happy with, and they wanted to get it absolutely spot on. So unfortunately, yeah, that just added to the original delay.
And the big one, of course, was the keyboard.
Yeah,
it was just
I know.
It was impossible to try and get the existing membrane to work reliably, mm-hmm. and that
but now it's just perfect.
Beautiful, yeah. They did a brilliant job.
It's a great machine to work on. It's better than a PC keyboard, to be honest. It's lovely. Yeah. It's a pleasure, and it just feels right, and it's got that visual style, and Rick and Phil Candy just did an amazing job on the engineering and the design and made it makeable. And that's the thing that makes it stand out, is the case. The board inside it is incredible as well, but that envelope that is put in, and that took time to get it so that it's not just something being thrown out, it's been done by a professional team who would not let it go out with a mistake, and it was the right decision in the end, because people would have opened that box and they'd have been disappointed, whereas everybody who opened that box, me included, it was just wow.
Yeah, there's nothing cheap about the Next at all. It feels like a good product, and from the point that you turn it on, the experience is just, you feel like it's a quality product, and I think that was the overall goal, to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to think of everything else that went. It was loads, and changed. Of course, the time though was used really well, and that's quite important. I think that over those 3 years, instead of just coming with ESX DOS, it came with NextZ Exos, which was the development of Gary's +3 ROMs. So it kept that on, and it does run ESX DOS as well for people who want to use it like that. And NextZ Exos includes ESX DOS compatibility layer, so you can run some commands. It's just it was used to make it able to use all existing peripherals. I remember the moment we finally got the microdrive and the Interface 1 working. It was just to make it a spectrum that we'd be proud of, or everybody would be proud of and proud to own. And I just can't say how much effort everybody put in, and previous on the manual, just, the tears and the screaming and the shouting and the Gary, why have you added this? I've written that page already, So, and the effort to make it really exact.
One of the most frequently asked questions is, why is the Next so expensive?
Because it costs a lot of money.
What a twist!
To do that sort of thing.
This is it. I think if you were planning on selling 4 or 5 million of them, the individual cost would shrink. But because there's been only so many produced, the cost of producing a mold and all the manufacturing and the kind of design that goes into the making the PCBs and making the PCBs and it mounts up quite quickly. So yeah, it's quite expensive to produce at such a small number. But if we were doing millions of them, maybe the cost could be a lot cheaper.
Simple things, if you're making 5,000 of them, that's nothing. That's a really small volume for a manufacturer. It's barely enough for them to set their assembly line up. They press the button and they all come whizzing off the other end and then onto something else. But the cost was setting that line up and pulling them off. So 5,000 Arctic 7s, that's hardly worth making, mate. You'll have to pay the full price for them. You won't.
It's a lot price. A lot cheaper than the Mega 65, anyway.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love one of those, but there we go. You can't have everything.
Yeah, I
on the Spectrum show.
I understand that completely, but people don't, and often I hear that some say they are greedy. It's so expensive, and something like that.
No,
there's no money in the bank account.
There's
no profit.
This poster, I paid to have this printed myself so I could take it to shows. Literally, we just to make this very clear, when we go to shows and promote, we pay our own pocket, our own hotels. Yep. We have to pay our own beer, and we give our time for nothing. So, everyone on the team is doing this pretty much nothing. I obviously some people are paid professionally. People like the design consultancies, the professional electronics and EMP testers. They have to be paid for their time because they are doing it as a job. But even they, as from what I understand, are being pretty helpful because a lot of them like the Spectrum. So you're probably not paying full whack for any of that. But you've got to do it, and it costs money to do these professional aspects of the job. The box manufacturer, the goods, the parts, and the KS1, as everyone knows, was delivered at cost to the team. So one or two people had to put their hand in their pocket and deal with it. And it's. The time is given freely for nothing, but if you try to charge the cost of the time that's gone in it, no one could afford to buy one. It'd be more expensive than Mega 65.
Yeah, I understand that, but
I know.
I had to ask because people. I was streaming once on YouTube from my ZX Spectrum Next, and one man came from Great Britain. Yeah, he was British. Yep. He started to complain. Wow, the Next is so expensive. He wasn't even from Russia or some Eastern. He was from Great Britain.
Well, but if you look at the actual cost, I mean, if you take the cost of a ZX Spectrum, £180 odd in 1982 for 48k Spectrum, it's about the cost of the Next in today's money. It's roughly similar, and Clive Sinclair was trying to make a profit on it, and this isn't.
I think if you compare the Next to something that's not a full computer that costs £100 or so, the difference in something that's cheaper and the Next, it's instantly noticeable that there's far more quality in the Next, and it's not just a cheap emulator running software. It's really has been designed from the ground up, and I think you get value for that. I know it is expensive, but I've used mine for pretty much every day for the past 4 odd years now. So
I've used constantly. I used my PS machine. Yep. I bought most Sony PS. I've definitely, other than the PS1, I played on the Next more than I have them.
Yeah. Worth every penny.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little about personalities. Why did some people who originally took part in the project leave the Next team? I mean, why was Victor Trucot replaced by Alan Albright, if I understand the situation correctly. I have nothing against Alan. He's a great guy. I'm in touch with him, but I wonder why does he do the things which in the beginning was done by Victor?
Victor finished the job. He got KS1 out. Alan helped to make it better and then took over. I mean, I think all people, they get to a point in the project where they're just, that project's enough for them. And you get to, there was a lot of very, very painful times. Finish the KS1. There's no two ways about it, and that strain was showing on the team. Even people who love each other can get very, very heartache ridden, but I don't think there's anything malicious about it. It's just the fact that, hey, that's I've done my bit and I've got other things I'm more interested in. Plus, he's got a family, young children, You can't all pour our entire life into everything. And thank goodness for Alan.
Yeah, but Alan was quite happy to take up the reins with the core development. And Victor, I think once KS1 was done, he wanted to move on to other projects because that's kind of what he does. He didn't want to kind of focus continually on the same thing forever. Where Alan was quite pleased to step in, and since Alan's come on board, he's put a number of extra features in the core that we didn't have before, such like CTC timer circuits. There's loads more. So
improved it.
Yeah, definitely.
Eastern, and certainly a lot of the Eastern developments have been more accurate with the pentagon timing. Alan's interest is in getting it as accurate as possible to every aspect as well. I think, which that takes somebody who's got an interest in that area as well. And his expertise is in that area is brilliant. So we're just grateful for him to have taken up the reins.
Yeah, I think as well, it's like Tim says, you just cannot underestimate the amount of hours that people pour into the Next of their own personal time to get things working, to get it right. And sometimes, it can be quite stressful. And some people need a little break for a while and then they'll come back. But it's that dedication that keeps it going. I remember working with Dee like days before the next distribution was going to be finalized, and we were trying to get the software working with the Pi and making sure it was seamless and it was a smooth experience for people. And there was just night after night working till 2-3 a.m. in the morning, testing stuff, making sure we covered everything. So yeah, I think it can be quite stressful if you've got a family, and I think Victor did a really good job on KS1, and we're in a good place with Alan for the core as it is. So.
Yeah, and Victor's done a lot of the porting of his existing cores as well to the Next in the alternate group. We don't say much about the fact that the Next is an FPGA product that can run other cores, but Victor ported a lot of cores. I know KS2's thrown him a little bit because we've made them all incompatible again, but he's going to have a crack at that, I'm sure, when he gets round to it. So it's you need to do what interests you. I do a lot more with 1970s computers than I did with the Next, but you come and go from projects as they enthuse you.
Okay, and the next question is pretty similar. On the Next Spectrum Next site, among the other developers, we can see a Brazilian Spectrum fan named Fabio Bellavenuta. If I understand that right, now he moved away from the project. Why?
I don't know too much about the initial involvement, because I think Fabio and Victor were kind of initially working on it. I think Fabio did the initial kind of sprite engine in the original core, but I think as it progressed, it kind of Fabio went off and left and did some other things, and then Victor kind of continued working it. Unfortunately, that's all I kind of know about the early days of the core.
Yeah, I think he was even gone by the time we joined, really. I'd not taken much part in it. Victor would chat to him a few times about things. So, when I was chatting to Victor, he'd I'd go and ask him if he does this or does that. So, so it's just the same thing again.
Okay.
It's a volunteer effort, it's not, people aren't in the millions out of doing this.
Yeah, I understand completely. And one more name. What is Dixela Rimran Sauter, if I read it correctly, in charge of in the Next project?
Oh, he's Well, he's working with David and I on a couple of bits with it. So
so Dee's been responsible for curating the special Linux image that runs on the Next Pi. He's also done a number of cool utilities for the Next. But his kind of primary knowledge, his resource is really valuable in that area of working on the Linux side, because he's created a customized image. It had to be in a fixed size of 1 gigabyte. And then there's a lot of development work that's required to kind of make the Next talk to the Pi Zero as well. So again, his knowledge and expertise is invaluable, really. And he's also currently hosting our version of, we've got an application where you can run it on the Next. It connects to an online database, and you can search for games and download them directly to your Next from the ZX DB. Dee's currently running all the back end stuff for that, and again, the development in that, his knowledge and expertise is brilliant.
Yeah, I'm getting a fast build for the Arctic 7 FPGA, the fastest. So, basically, he's like anything, he contributes what he's capable of, and he's got the time and energy to do. And it's just well received, and it wouldn't happen without him, basically. So, thanks, Dee. He's a valuable part of the team. Everyone is, it's everyone. It's
a lot of things wouldn't happen without Dee being involved.
I tell you one thing that would have happened is people would have been opening their Next up to replace their SD card, because without his read-only file system and adaptions to that, it wouldn't. You wouldn't be able to just turn your Next on and off.
Why is there no power button in the first version of the Next? How did it happen that creating a convenient, modern and expensive Spectrum, such an elementary and necessary thing as a power button, wasn't added to it? And will such a button be added in the second version?
David will give the corporate line.
I'm not entirely sure the real reasons, but I think that it's strange to think even like a small incremental cost on. So if an extra 5p or an extra 10p is added to a single unit, it doesn't sound that much. But when you start scaling that up, it starts adding £5,000-10,000 extra cost that may have not been factored in the original scope. And I think the design of the Next kind of evolved over time as well, because I think it just started out as a PCB, and then I think Henrique got involved and he wanted to see it in a case, and I think the power board, if it was factored in from the very beginning, the overall final goal, then maybe it would have been easier to say, let's put a power button in it.
But it isn't a little adapter now. You can actually solder one on if you really want one, where you can isolate the power. But like as Dave said, to modify the molds now and to add any kind of extra part, it would just. And I think it's not a good idea. It's not a Spectrum without having to unplug the lead, is it?
Let's talk about the sound. I have a few Spectrums, and when I compare the sound of the Next with the sound of, say, a Toast track with a by Delight stereo mode, I can clearly hear that the original machine has more high frequencies than the Spectrum Next, and I like the sound of Toast track more than the sound of the Next, and that's not only me. Why is it so? Is it due to the fact then that in the Spectrum Next a sound chip is implemented on FPGA, or there are some other reasons for that?
If we go back to the 128K AY that you prefer, is it?
With a stereo mode by Delight, I mean.
Yeah. The stereo mode, I think all different Spectrums with AY chips, they've all got slightly different sound experiences. Like I know the Grey is slightly more high frequency than things like the +2 AB. They're slightly more bassy, and I think in the Next, there are some DSP filters that go on the actual AY output to kind of make it sound as close to what I can't remember what the original goal was, but it is adjustable at a core level. But I think there's been a lot of tweaking just to get that perfectly right. So it's a difficult one to get. I'm quite happy with the sound. I'm too. I prefer something with a bit more bass and a bit, but it's not just because it's on FPGA. I think it possibly could be tweaked. but we don't really get many people saying the sound's terrible.
No.
Yeah.
The sound is just all right, but when I make comparisons, I can hear that sound a little different. All right.
Yeah.
That's not because of FPGA and because of that there is no real AY chip in the Next.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's variation in electronics, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say it could be
the sound different.
Yeah, the PCB of the Byte Delight board, it's got different circuitry that the audio is going to be running through, and that's all going to obviously affect the final output. So,
okay, an external keyboard and a mouse connect to the Next via PS2 port, and if one uses PS2 to USB adapter, the adapter presses to the VGA connector, and this is very inconvenient. This is an unfortunate omission. Will this moment be fixed somehow in the issue 2?
No.
Unfortunately, the design of the actual cases and stuff like that they're still coming from KS1, and to make changes to that would increase the cost massively. So yeah, it's a small inconvenience. I do agree. I had the same issue. If it was a perfect world, it would have been moved to the left by a millimeter.
If you buy the right leads, they work fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe there are different connectors.
Yeah, the square one which pushes right up to it.
You need
Is that a round one?
Yeah, it's a square one.
Great thing. I should buy it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about multicolor. Why does the multicolor work incorrectly on the Next if you use HDMI output? What is the problem there, and will it be fixed?
Okay, basically the Next has got a number of different video modes. If you on mine, for example, my monitor will do VGA mode 1. I've got another monitor beside me that'll do VGA mode 0, which is 50 hertz. And obviously you know the difference between the sort of 60 hertz and 50 hertz,
of course,
which will make things very different, mainly between US and UK standards. But you know that's the big one. But then there's a subtlety that a lot of monitors really can't do that 50 hertz signal accurately. So we've added a couple of modes that are in there called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and even 6, which just increase the frequency slightly, coming up towards 60 hertz. So effectively, you're getting something that isn't quite the standard 50 hertz and isn't quite the standard of anything else, but it's enough to make other monitors operate. And the difficulty is if you select a 50 hertz, which the original Spectrum was, then you absolutely need that timing to be 50 hertz. And it has to be exactly 50 hertz. And if your monitor doesn't do 50 hertz, then you're going to struggle. And if you're using any video mode other than that. Now, HDMI is a problem. Although it's a 50 hertz HDMI in theory, or a 60 hertz, it isn't exactly the same frequency for the underlying Spectrum, because to generate that HDMI signal, you need to have the clocks on the FPGA run slightly differently. Now, what the hope is that there will be sufficient ability to re-engineer the HDMI control so that it can do a very, very small buffering of just a couple of lines, so that the two frequencies can run out of sync. And that would then allow HDMI to do color timing. But Alan's put a lot of effort in, though, to make those timing demos run if you put the right config in. And half the problem is if you don't, for example, a lot of the Pentagon demos, if you don't select the Pentagon core model, then that doesn't turn on and off all the relevant things that affect the timing, like things like contention is off by normal on the Next. So if you launch it through the launcher, it will tend or try to turn on contention in the right bits of memory, because even the demo code that was written in the lower 16K, it needs to have contention on for the timing to work properly and things like that. So there's lots and lots of little things that can affect it, and you've got to be very careful you've picked the right type. And of course, because it's a Spectrum that can be any Spectrum, people run a 1 to 8K demo in 48K mode, it'll fail because the 1 to 8K timing was just subtly different to the 48K. So you need quite a knowledge of the existing machines, because demo coders, like Mr. Mook above me, have got the skill to make these machines do all sorts of things and play tricks with them that you can find really easily. But if we can find one that's broken on a Next, everyone will put a bit of effort in to try and work out to make it run reliably at the right timing. So they should be right.
I think as well, hopefully at some point in the future, a new HDMI mode. The plan is that we'll find a HDMI mode, like Tim said, that will have this tiny buffer and it will fix the multicolor programs, applications, demos for on the HDMI mode.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's because the number of lines is slightly shorter on the HDMI mode to make it sync with the TVs.
Yeah.
But that then has a knock-on effect on obviously the ULA.
Yeah, HDMI needs 700 and something, and we've only put it out for you. So you just got to do something with the gap and the miss. So you're going to lose some if you do it. So it's a compromise.
Yeah, I understand. Compromise. To make everything run on the machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
When we released the Delta Shadow game, we encountered with such a problem that a lot of users updated their next course to the 3.01.08 unofficial core, which they had downloaded from GitHub, I suppose. That core had bugs and our game didn't work properly with it, so we received a lot of complaints. Why do you upload untested cores to the public access? Well, I understand this question is better to ask Phoebus Dockers probably, but anyway.
The Git is leading edge. There's no two ways about it, and things in it can be a bit broken. Usually they're not on the master branch. But the other thing that sometimes happens, like happened with 08, is nothing at the time it was uploaded broke, and then other stuff that got written showed up the bugs that were in it. And that's another problem you get sometimes, that people were developing things with the previous one that this one would break. So it is quite a juggle. It was a bit of an unfortunate one, that, but no one in the team spotted anything broken in it. So well done for finding the bug.
So sometimes you can have these really niche bugs that exist. It's not happened quite a lot, but 3.01.08 was one that had this bug inside, and you would have to write certain code and use the DMA in a particular way to expose the problem, and nothing had been written that had yet pushed the core in that way. So it slipped through. And the GitLab has always been, this is, you put this on your machine, this, like Tim said, this is a bleeding edge. We are testing, feedback, any issues, and lots of people report issues on the GitLab. And it's when we do for us as a proper distribution on the SpecNext website that's being kind of finalized, that we're completely happy that it's completely bug free and ready for the masses.
So 99% of the time you'll be all right, but there is a slight risk. There are versions that aren't even in the GitLab because we wouldn't want anyone accidentally installing them, like the current one we're testing for the version 4 board. You absolutely wouldn't see that anywhere near because it can trash old boards until it's fixed. So we don't want to end up with half a dozen people going, I'll try that, and breaking their old boards, so we do try and keep anything out that's going to do serious damage that needs people to have cables and programmers, where, if you can't recover it by pressing the NMI and the drive button, then it shouldn't be publicly visible. People should know they're not going to break anything terribly by trying this stuff, but they might have to put their old card back in and press update again.
Yeah, got it. This is a manual for the Spectrum Next. It is a pretty thick book, but it doesn't have a table of contents. I know this issue was already widely discussed, but anyway, can you tell us, please, what's the story behind this?
It didn't fit. It would have been too big to go in the box. So something had to go, and I think that there's certain things at the front of that book that are more important to be in there, I think, than an index. There's definitely the tribute in the front is an important couple of pages, and that really is a sacrificial thing. But online is available a printout. You can fold it and put it in the back of your manual. It'll be just like your original Spectrum manual, then, with all your bits in, your extra bits you put in.
Falling apart.
So there is a table of contents in the digital version, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And it's text searchable as well, so you can search for keywords and things like that. So because really, don't forget, you're not supposed to look at that book and one page at a time. You're supposed to read it all the way through from the start to the end. It's not one to jump into and go, oh, look at this bit. No, you have to read it all the way from the start to the end, just like you did your original one, so you learn everything about the machine.
I must admit, I didn't.
Just go to the SpecNext wiki. There's a link on there that people can get the digital version for free.
The index, and then you just print the index out as well if you want a copy for it. It is an inconvenience, but I'm sure it won't happen the second time round. Maybe, I don't know. There's so much more to go in the book this time. It's gonna have to be, and no more room.
This is the box from the Spectrum Next. It's really beautiful, but I think the design of the box of issue 1 wasn't very successful because, it often gets torn while shipping here.
Yep.
And will the design of the issue 2 box be different here? I mean?
Mike says...
Yes. Yeah, the internals of the box is going to be slightly different this time to prevent them ripping while they're shipping. I'm not going to give any details of what it might be at this point because it may change, but I know that there is going to be a change to the design so the boxes don't get damaged.
And the very early ones that went out in issue 1, as soon as that was reported, the ones that were shipped afterwards went out with extra
kind of padding, didn't they? To
I know.
What's happening. Yeah.
So they took action as quickly as possible to fix it, and I know it was a bit disappointing for people, but if the worst mistake you've got in your box is a little bit of a tear of cardboard, well, it is an unfortunate one. I think some people who was badly damaged also had replacement ones. So
yeah, I saw.
Done for them. Yeah, the best was done for them, and it is a bit gutting when you get a new product and something like that's happened. So especially for the team who felt terrible.
How came that the Spectrum Next didn't get Dizzy 8 extended version? What problems did you have with the Russian developers, which led to a break in relations between them and the Next team? I'm interested to know your point of view on this issue.
From what I've gathered, that is that the team were always planning to do a 1 to 8K version first. When that was released, I think some people were slightly upset that they hadn't had a next version, and that's what they were expecting. So I think there was just a little bit of miscommunication between what was going out and what people were expecting. And I think, as the internet can be, that some people were kind of quite hard on them, and whether it was justified or not, I'm not sure, because the Russian team were putting all their time and effort into this for free, and again a labour of love. So I think that upset that team, and unfortunately, I think, as far as I'm aware, we were just told it was going to be a 1 to 8K version from the start. So. Yeah. That's as much as I know. Unfortunately, we haven't fallen out with the guys who done the Dizzy team, but I just think I think they might have got a little bit fed up.
Yeah,
exactly. And you can't blame people. Pile on in a Facebook argument. And it's not the same as being face to face and talking about things. I think a lot of efforts were made to try and fix it, but it's once you're hurt, people just and I don't blame them really. As you're doing this for fun, if people are going to take it as a and give it a try, why would you bother? And that's the way it is, and we just have to live with it. So the 1 to 8K version is really nice, though. And the next
it's great.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's really nice. It's a really nice game. So we get the benefit of it anyway, don't we? You shouldn't be hurt you haven't got something extra. That's even more people who can play it. So that's our view.
Alright, the next question worries many, including me. When will TR-DOS be implemented in the next operating system? Because, in Russia and other Eastern European countries, TR-DOS is very, very important for the Spectrum fans, and there are lots of great games, demos, and all sorts of software for it.
So, as you know, at the moment, you are able to run TR-DOS via booting into the Pentagon personality, but obviously it would be so much better to have it built into NextZX OS into the browser. There are plans. I'm not going to say too much because when you say something, it sounds like it's been promised, but there are plans to integrate TR-DOS loading from the main NextZX OS menu. Again, though, it takes quite a bit of time for people to work on these things, and those people are currently busy with other tasks before KS2.
Yeah, and as to why it's just not bundled in with a way of launching ESX-DOS, we've been very careful not to tread on people's copyrights. Yeah. And obviously ESX-DOS, unless we've got literally every single part of it clear, you can't chance distribute. I'm sure they wouldn't mind if it was distributed, but You know, if you can't account for everything that might go with it as well, and then if you haven't got that, then you haven't got, haven't got the new NMI menu, which is someone else. And it was just, you had to concentrate and pick on one, but make it really easy to install the other. So you can do it. It's easy, and it's one flick switch to do it once you've installed it. So, but like as David says, we'd love to make it so it's a bit more native as well.
I think Alan as well did a proof of concept. He patched, I can't remember the name of the game that he patched. Fire and Ice, I think it was, which was a TRDOS version, and he patched the TRDOS calls, which enabled it to run from next ZX OS. So the theory there is that it's possible to trap these TRDOS calls and then implement them in next ZX OS so that they everything should run. But that's another thing, a goal for in the future.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay. I mean, I suppose the difficulty is for the team. They've got to be very careful because they've licensed this from Sky.
Copyrights. I understand.
You cannot have, if you haven't got every dot, the lawyers will be on you when they, So.
Yeah. So it's got to be a re-implementation of the compatibility rather than just getting the TRDOS ROMs and sticking them in with the distribution.
Lots of people ask if the next will be on sale later, or the second batch will be produced in exactly the same quantity as it was pre-ordered.
There's some surplus that gets added onto the overall orders, just in case these failures and things like that or replacements are required. I don't know exactly how many of those would be, but I think last time they may. I think last time on KS1, I think it was like 5 or 10 that were made extra that were able to be sold on the shop. But I couldn't give you any more details on accurate figures of.
And the reality is there's no money in this. There's no angel investor providing millions because they're going to make a lot of money. So there's no cash in the bank to make 1,000 more just in case they can be sold. That's just not there. So you can't press the button to manufacture if you can't pay the bills. And Mike and Enrique will press the button on the number that we're asked for, plus a few extras, as Dave says. And if there are extras, then fine. But you can't make twice the amount without twice the money, and every penny of the Kickstarter is being used for the production cost. There's nothing there to do it again, and so it's a shame really because we'd love to be able to walk into WH Smith's and buy a Next. So
it would look awesome, that wouldn't it?
It would, yeah, it would. But that's unless anybody out there, any multi-millionaires, who think it'd be really cool to see, shops around the world having lots of Nexts in. I'm sure if you phone Mike and offer him millions and millions, he'll press the button and make more. As long as it's in the bank account before he presses the order button.
So I think you already answered the next question, but anyway, I have to ask the question from a viewer. The Spectrum Next Issue 1, was it profitable or unprofitable? Sorry if I'm sounding a little straight and rude, but...
I think as Tim mentioned, the initial KS1, Kickstarter 1, ended up costing some people in the team, some money to get it over the final finishing line. So in that respect, no, it absolutely didn't turn a profit. It cost people to get it finished. So this isn't done for profit at all. That's
the other thing. The Next is its own worst enemy. It looks so amazing and professional. It's got to have a big company behind it that's making millions. It's just a it's a Facebook group and a couple of chats, and a pile of emails and lots of hours of work for everybody sat in their back rooms, and visiting. And this is the time to visit the manufacturers. Has cost Enrique and Mike loads of their life, and they've had to give up time off of their works to do that, and they've got jobs and businesses to run. So it's. But they do it out of the love. So, that's it. So there is no multi-million-pound company behind you is the ultimate answer, isn't it? And no, it didn't make a profit.
Okay. This question wasn't in my list, but where do you assemble Spectrum Next? In China or in the UK?
First lot were done in the UK.
Yeah, they were done in the UK. And I think it's logistics to keep the logistics costs down this time. I think are they being manufactured in China this time? Yeah. So they're going to be sent over as an entire unit.
I know they're looking at possibilities for logistics of being able to ship direct as well, so that we can avoid import-export duty that has now changed since the early days. But, no promises are being made by Mike. Yep. Everyone's looking at what they can do. And in the end, if the only way we can ship KS2 is to get everything containered over and go to, somewhere in the UK that's what they'll do. They'll do whatever's needed to deliver it. But at the moment, I believe the assembly line, the board I've got was built in China in its entirety. The case is now made in China, because the electronics originally from the UK, but this board's been assembled in China and seems to be perfectly good. So the logic would be to bring the keyboard, the case, and the board together in China. If nothing else, sustainability says you shouldn't be flying things thousands of miles to put them together. You do them where they're made, put them together there, and send them straight to the end user if you can. But again, that's something you'd really have to dig into, Mike, and what the plans are, because they're being finalised at the moment. There was a big announcement on the Kickstarter, asked people, explained why it would just be so much easier and more economic to do it. So, you just got to face reality in the world as it is today,
Did Sir Clive Sinclair know anything about the Spectrum Next project? And if so, what was his attitude to all of this? Did he speak out about it, or he just didn't care?
Personally, I don't know. We could find out, but yeah.
I know his sons have seen it.
Yep.
So, yeah, his sons have seen the Next and are quite impressed with it, but I don't know whether Clive ever did, so he was probably aware of it. He was quite a widely read person, wasn't he? He wasn't going to be... but I'm not aware of any moment where he's in the room with one. I mean, he's famously... He was an inventor, wasn't he? The Spectrum was just a project, and he moved on to another... project. That's what he loved doing. He loved creating new stuff. So I suspect he was... He thought, oh, that's nice, but he probably didn't really think,
Yeah.
I don't know him well, but you just get an impression he would have probably been more interested in the next thing he was trying to design than something based on it,
Yeah, recently I interviewed his son, Crispin Sinclair, and I can agree with you, Wout.
Yeah, good. Well, that means the interview came over well. I did see that one, actually. Thank you for doing that. That's always useful.
Why for Raspberry Pi can be mounted in the Next, and what additional abilities does it give? I know about the ability to play TZX files, but what other practical use does that extension have?
Originally, the Pi Zero was going to be an accelerator for kind of doing sprites. I think in the early days, Jim had cobbled up some code that ran on the Pi Zero and was able to kind of display sprites over the original TB Blue display. And then I think that idea was then integrated directly into the FPGA core. So then there was a Pi connection with a Pi Zero, and then it was a case of looking what actually can be done with that Pi Zero. And as you say, one of the primary uses at the moment is to play TZX files. But it can also do things like play SID music, SNDH files, a variety of different music formats. And I think going forward with NextPi 2 that D's working on, there's going to be a tighter integration with how that operates with the operating system as well. Because currently with TZX, there's no transport controls. So if you've got a multi-load game, there's no way of pausing or playing that TZX once it's loaded. And the idea is it would be nice to be able to control those from the Next keyboard itself, so you could pause and start a tape and it'd be passed through. There's other potential things of using a floating point unit that I think Tim might have been slightly involved with. So the idea is we're going to try and expand the use of what the Pi is doing. We were a little bit pressed for time on the Kickstarter one, and we needed something solid, so that's why its primary functions at the moment is TZX, playing back some different music formats, like I said, like mods, XMs and stuff like that. And KS2, hopefully that's going to be expanded to get more use out of it.
Yeah, and I think as well, there's also this, it's there for people to play with as well if they've got some ideas. Yep. It's all clearly documented, loads of ideas. If you've got ideas about when get your head down, start doing something for it. it's meant to give you some scope to do all sorts of things, but it needs someone who's, if you've got a passion about it and you want to do something with it, then you'll get something really good out of it, But
that's it, because the Pi Zero runs a cut down version of Diet Pi, which is Linux Raspbian based operating system. So it's got pretty much everything on there. It's got things like Python on there. Yeah. So if you wanted to do some communication, trying to use the Pi Zero to talk to the Next over the GPIO pins, you could go on, investigate, write some code. It's all there for playing around with. It's there for tinkering with. It's not kind of black box technology that you're not allowed to touch. You can go in and tinker away as your heart contents and come up with new useful ways of using it.
Yeah, and I did see someone on the group recently has said they'd planning on transmitting over 3D coordinates for an elite type ships, do the rotations, and then just send the line data back. Well, that's an ideal, something ideal you could do with it, So I'd love to see that working, because that's a clever idea of something you could improve, and is in line with what you'd have done back in the day with the BBC. You'd have put a coprocessor on. When we were writing software on the BBC, I bought a 6502 coprocessor, helped me to make it faster. It wasn't to play a faster version of Elite, but it helped, and that was definitely a really useful investment.
Okay, I completely got your point. But as you mentioned Elite, I would like to ask you, do you like Elite? How good are you in this game?
I haven't played it heavily for many years, but and I played it on the BBC a lot with the 6502 coprocessor. I loved it. I thought it was a ground changing game at the time, definitely. I think so. I never really played the Spectrum one a lot, because obviously having a BBC, I was lucky. I really had most computers back in the day because we were running a software house. They weren't mine, but I could play with them all. So I tended to pick the platform for the particular game. So I loved Spectrum games, always did. I played Elite on the BBC a lot because it was a really good game. I played Iridium on the 664. So,
It was originally made for the BBC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That was where it came out first. And it also, like I said, they released a version that would use the second processor, and it was much faster, very smooth, great to play. So yeah, it's and it was a groundbreaking genre to say this is 3D open world type explore and trade in, and yeah, it's a great game. I love it. If I can get my BBC repaired, I'll go back and play it. But actually, there is a really good shouldn't say this, but there is a good BBC core for the Next, isn't there? That Hoglet's done an amazing job on, and it plays Elite really well. So, and you can of course put the 6502 coprocessor onto it and make it a faster machine. So Elite on the BBC core is really good as well for those who haven't played it. So it's I haven't had a chance to play much of it. I just fired it up, proved it worked, but good idea. Maybe I need to go away. We need to go away and have a little play with both the Spectrum Elite on the Next, because it's faster when the Next is clocked. So it's much better.
David,
I'll have to admit and put my hands up and say, sorry, I didn't really know what I was doing on Elite when I was playing it when I was a kid and used to just fly around. I played a lot of Frontier on the Amiga. I really enjoyed that, but Elite, I'm a little bit younger than most people, so I didn't really know what I was doing.
David,
enjoyed it anyway.
May I ask you, how old are you?
I'm 43, so.
Tim, may I ask you the same question?
Yes, of course you can. I was born in 1965, so what's that make me, 57, something like that? Yeah. So.
I must admit that I'm very bad playing Elite. I can't just fly into that hole in the station. That's that's terrible.
That's probably all I could do after 35 years as well, to be honest. I'd have to learn it again, but I loved it. It was a good game.
Yeah, great. It's very popular here. I don't know how in the UK, but in the Eastern Europe, it's very popular.
Oh yeah, there's still a lot of people who play it and a lot of people who collect them.
Yeah. Will the issue 2 have a different design of the SD card slot? Because in this version, it is not very convenient if you don't have long nails.
I have the fix. It's a classic Spectrum fix. You put a little bit of sellotape on the back of the card, and it's very easy to put the card in and out, okay? So that's cheap and cheerful to do.
If I understand your answer, it won't be changed.
No. Nope.
Yeah.
It means a change to the mold.
Okay.
The other problem we've got is that everyone asks about these cards that eject in and out. But when you plug in and unplug in a lot, they fail very fast.
Yeah.
And then people would have a cost to repair their machine. Whereas these sort of push ones are incredibly reliable. They very rarely fail. So,
what were the most interesting challenges you encountered working on the Next?
ooh, interesting challenges working on the Next.
Interesting challenges. The transferring stuff from the Next to the Pi was quite an interesting challenge, because I kind of jumped in at the last minute to help Dee get the software up and running. I had no idea how the UART really worked. I had no idea how the back end of the NextPi was meant to be receiving the data, and all the kind of intricacies that were involved with it. And it was just a 2 weeks of pure discovery, of trial and error, trying to figure things out, recording the results, fine-tuning, and in the end we got a result that was working. That was quite challenging, but it's like anything. If you invest enough time and effort, you can generally solve any problem that's put in front of you. I would say, that's probably been one of the most interesting challenges for me.
Yeah. I would probably say the most disappointing one that we didn't achieve was before David helped Dee with that. Dee and I spent literally weeks of late at night trying to get the other interfaces, the SPI and the I2C comms, working with the Pi. And then we discovered there was a hardware bug that meant it would never work. After literally, we just gave up. And then luckily, I think it was a bit of burnout. And then luckily David took over and got that UART comms working, and the Pi was really usable. So that was definitely the biggest struggle I remember being involved in, was getting that to the point where we could make it reliable and getting the UART tested and running, which, I certainly didn't do much with it after I got all that. It was just too much like hard work. So, yeah, that I think is there. And I said about the one about the small code. And then for me, when I first got involved, I wanted to write a version of my program, Paw, for it. And of course, initially it was ESXDOS running on the board. And then the sudden switch to NextZXOS meant that all the changes I'd made to be compatible with ESXDOS, I had to go back and think, no, I should go back to the +3 type code. And then I lost the will to live. So that was probably just a personal one, because trying to write for a platform that was shifting so much in the early days, it was very enthusiastic because I had a board. I backed the board version. So we got the board really quick. And to play fair, I was glad I did that. I'm glad I backed the board, because the delays with the keyboard and the case, those people who had the bare boards, we had a lot to play with in the early days, but you had to go through a lot of pain and change if you had a bare board, I think. So, that was probably it, really. I think that's actually what, all those people who backed the board, thank you, because all your effort of putting up with the changing world made it something that when it got delivered was a really good product, because that board, they were really free alpha testers, weren't they?
Well, this is it. I remember when I received my board only as well, and trying to get it to work with HDMI, it just wouldn't sync with any TV, and it was a bit of a bombshell that was dropped that this isn't working. And there was lots of core changes and updates and testing. So many cores we ran through that Vitz was producing to try and get a stable image to work. So that again was quite an interesting early part of the development.
Yeah, every monitor and TV in my house, but the board would be on this one, and it'd be, no, there's a problem here, and that's a good one. That was a nightmare. It's sound Victor, he'd do a build, we get another one for that works. No sound on that one though. So and just testing on everything. So
you also have to consider that every time you want to make a change to the code in the core, it takes around 20 odd minutes for it to be built and produced, and then there's a little bit of extra work, and then you can pass it out to people to say, can you try this? So if you make one mistake or you need to make a tweak, it's a 20 minute wait until you can test those results.
And it's different time zones as well. So some of us are up late at night, early in the morning, and the same, all of us are in different time zones.
Yeah, I understand.
As well, so, yourself, it makes a big change, so.
The Spectrum Next Issue 2, will it have any essential and fundamental differences from the Issue 1, and will it be completely compatible with the first version?
Last question, yes, it will be completely compatible with the first version. out of the box, if a bit of software runs on KS2, it'll run on KS1. There is no intention to diverge the system. So even the things like what we're experimenting with now, when you update, it's the same TBU and it just picks the right thing, RTX 7 or 6. And there's no intention to do anything for the new machine that you can't do on the old. There's a couple of little things you can see. I mean, I think there's like the 7's got an automatic temperature sensor on it, which you could read out, but that's not a feature on the 6, so you couldn't use it. But that's not going to be a major part of the operating system. You know what I mean? It's not something that you're going to make a big thing about. There are subtle differences, but they're not going to affect people.
Yeah, the goal is to make sure that the KS2 devices operate exactly as KS1, and the software will run on either one. Apart from Alan, who's done a small document that will only run on the second one, but that's only to read the temperature sensor, and it was more of a test of that particular registers. But yeah, they should be identical in the software that they should be able to run.
Yeah, probably it'll the EMI testing, the electrical emission testing will be different. There'll be there's some more changes to the electrical interface at the back to make it able to drive more peripherals. So,
and I believe that the HDMI now has a resistor allowed on it, so there's no back powering anymore, which was an issue with the KS1. So yeah, there's just some physical modifications that have been done to the actual PCB layout to make it better, so to speak. But software-wise, they should be entirely compatible.
Oh, and if you accidentally plug in a original Spectrum power supply, it doesn't blow the board up, as Mike proved live on video. I was very disappointed when he didn't get any smoke coming out of it.
So it's power rectifier now in there. Yeah. So.
But I wouldn't rely on that if I was you, because you could have your very valuable KS1 next there. So mine are two sides of the keyboard. My 48K is there, my next is there. The power lead comes that way for the next, and that way, and they won't reach far enough, so you can't join them together. It's the only safe way.
A question that interests many Spectrum fans in the post-Soviet countries. Do you know something about ZX evolution? What do you think about it?
Seeing the evolution, the ZX evolution, I think it's a great board. I think if the Next hadn't come along, it might have been a route may have followed. But I think getting hold of one in the UK and finding people who have them as well is quite difficult, and the Next has made it quite easy to find people that already have Next. So yeah, the evolution is a very capable and very nicely designed machine, and a great evolution of the original ZX hardware. But unfortunately, like I say, we just don't have access to them. It's not that easy for us to get hold of them. I've looked at YouTube videos to kind of see some of the software that they produce, and they seem to do some really impressive stuff. But yeah, as far from that, I haven't really had physical experience of them.
No, not me, but it does look pretty amazing. And I have got too much Spectrum stuff really to do another one again, I think. So, but if one happened to come my way, I might play with it. So it's. But yeah, I think the key point here is there's lots of different Spectrums, aren't there? There's a Spectrum for everyone, and it's great that anyone who's writing for a Spectrum of any type is contributing to the overall available things, and that'll encourage people to. People will see stuff on the Evolution and go, "Oh, why should I do that on the Next?" So yeah, it's all good, and it's a good product. Definitely looks impressive.
So it would be interesting for you to have ZX Evolution.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would play with one. Yeah, I'd love to see what they can do. I think also there's a slight language barrier as well, because obviously if all the technical information's in Russian, I have to use Google Translate, and it's not always easy to kind of translate it accurately. So yeah, there is that slight barrier, but yeah.
You know what I'm thinking about? I actually have one ZX Evolution board, and I would like to give it to you. Would you agree?
David?
I mean, I'd be very, very pleased if you were going to send me an Evolution board. I'd love to try and write some software for it. That would be absolutely amazing. That's very, very generous of you.
And the last question, what are the prospects for your project, and how do you see the future of the ZX Spectrum Next?
So the prospects, I would say they're looking pretty good. Everything's slowly moving forward. There's not been any disasters that are looking like it's going to throw the project off course massively. Yeah, touch wood. And I think the future is going to be, similar to what we've had. We've seen continuous involvement from the people in the next team, the continued kind of focus and desire to work and produce and write better things. I'd love it if more developers would get involved writing software, but I understand, we're of a different age now where we don't have a huge amount of free time. But yeah, I'd love more developers to get on board and write some more software for the next. It's a great system to write for. It's really fun. There's lots of tricks and things that haven't been used yet, and there's a lot of adventure that goes on when you're writing code for the next. So I think I'm going to continue developing for the next for as long as it keeps me interested in it, and it's managed to do that for a good number of years so far. And I've got things in the pipeline that I'm going to be working on. So yeah, I think the prospects are looking really good. I think that once we've got KS2 out as well, and we've got all those lovely new Next users on board, the market for software will be even bigger. So yeah, looking really, really positive from me.
Yeah, all right. There's always new games coming out. I mean, we had ZX Harrier from Lampros just suddenly appeared the other weekend, and there are people working in the background, and things just appear that are great fun to play, and we can all go back and play any of the thousands of games we've got from the past as well. And I do, I frequently do just for 5 minutes. And these, I don't know about you, but modern games take a lot of time we haven't got. Whereas modern games for the next, you can get some value out of it really quickly and easily, and they're just the best way to entertain yourself now, to take yourself back, to the 1980s and just enjoy that time where you had great fun, and the next allows that to happen. And those 5,000 people, when they open their box, are going to rediscover that. And there'll be 1,000 who'll put them in a box in a corner and won't have time to do it because the kids are screaming and they got to do this. And there'll be, but out of that will be a couple of hundred people who think, right, I'm really going to do what I said I was originally going to do, and I'm going to get that code written, and they're going to become good at it as well, and they're going to add to the library of the next as well. And they'll find some more interesting things to plug into it. I mean, I've got a few old bits of hardware I've managed to acquire, and one of the things I want to do is make them work with my Next, so I haven't got to get my 48K out to do it, so I can just have the one Next to rule them all, But just that's because that suits me. So, I'm always finding things to play with, and I think, as David said, Matt did the Doc Jam recently, and it just went, wow, okay, we'll have a go at that. And then things, there's always a bit of community around it, and the more people get involved, the team take a lot of, everybody's like, oh wow, have you seen what someone's doing? Look at that, that's amazing. Even if all you've done is something that you think, oh, I'm not so sure, but every major development happens because somebody tries something simple. I love seeing the next generation of coders for the Spectrum. I can play all the Bearsden primary school games on my Next, because it's a Spectrum, and they're writing it on Spectrums on AGD, so we get the benefit of both sides of the world, and that's great, So just hopefully there'll be more Next users as well, that the team don't get so tired that they will do another. They'll do another one as well.
Maybe
big ask. Yeah, I know one's promising that. I'm saying I hope they don't get tired, and I include myself in that.
Yeah,
because we hope that there'll be regular batches of these going on into the future.
Yeah, and as we said, this isn't really a develop and forget kind of product or platform. The core updates have been continuous throughout the life of the Next, and hopefully that will continue as well. In that improvements and refinements will continue to come. So it'll always be relevant.
Yeah, and alternate cores, so people who want to dip their hand back into it, it's, not everyone's got the space to have half a dozen computers on their desk, so it's for those casual users who want to try out some stuff from their youth in other machines. Who knows, maybe someone will do an Oric core one day.
So guys, it seems my questions are over. Thank you for your great job, thank you for the Spectrum Next, and thank you for coming, thank you for agreeing to reply my questions. All best.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Cheers.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Thank you.
So, cut. И по сложившейся уже старой доброй традиции в конце видео хочу поблагодарить людей, без которых бы мой канал и мой контент был бы просто невозможен. Говорю огромное спасибо Джедаю, дяде Игорю, Андрею Угольнику, Жмуру, Зельберовичу, Игорю Овчинникову, Лапу Лену, Михаилу, Маше и Сергею, Телекрабу, Metal Surgery, Сиру Вулкану, Роману М, Джагу, Полтеру, Ред Блинку, Соль по вкусу, Задонатил, Сергею Доброву, сайту ZXArt, где есть все для спектрума, Андрею Угольнику, Анатолию Мережаному, компании Таон Electronics, Александру Ляшуку, Василию Селиванову, Пьяной Мухе, Мише, Александру Шапаршину, Сайберу, Юджину Труневу, Снауту 81, Садфинстафу, Василию Харужику и всем тем людям, чьи имена и ники вы сейчас видите на своих экранах, и не только им, потому что некоторых я упускаю из-за всяких технических моментов. Спасибо вам всем, друзья. Покедова!